شهر الطاعة والإيمان شهر الرحمة والغفران شهر الطاعة والإيمان شهر الرحمة والغفران
أيامك خير الأيام
يا رمضان
يا شهر صيام وقيام
يا رمضان
أيامك خير الأيام
يا رمضان
يا شهر صيام وقيام
يا رمضان.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Continuing from yesterday's discussion on matters pertaining to women, there are a number of principles in this regard which one has to appreciate before understanding how Islam holistically looks at the woman. For example, when you look at many verses of the Holy Quran, you see that the logic of these verses indicates that the man and the woman, in relation to perfection and reaching and attaining to perfection, they are equal with one another. No one is more superior, neither is more superior to the other. For example, in chapter 16, verse 97, Man amila saliha, one who does a righteous action, min dhakarin o untha, be they male or female, wa huwa mu'min, but the believers, when they do good action whilst having faith, now be they male or female, فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً. These people, we shall most definitively assign life and give, add or give them life, but a life of hayatan tayyibah, a life of prosperity, spiritual prosperity. And this is a rank, it's a spiritual rank. One who reaches hayatan tayyibah, the prosperous life, has been granted a spiritual level which they didn't have before. So here it says whether you're male or female. Or for example in chapter 33 verses 35 and to 36, you see that it always mentions both. When it comes to attributes of perfection, be you male or female, it doesn't matter. You both have access to it. For example, innal muslimina wal muslimat. Verily the Muslim men and the Muslim women. Wal mu'minina wal mu'minat. The believing men and the believing women. Wal qanitina wal qanitat. Here the obedient men and the obedient women again. Both are mentioned hand in hand. Was sadiqina was sadiqat. The truthful men and the truthful women. Was sabirina was sabirat. The patient men and the patient women. Wal khashi'ina wal khashi'at. The humble men and the humble women. And it continues. And at the end it says, A'addallahu lahum, that Allah has prepared for them, maghfiratan wa ajran azima. Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and a mighty or a very great reward. So here we see that be you male or female, when it comes to attributes of perfection, you're on equal pegging. No one is superior to the other. In other verses of the Holy Quran, it says, humans are what they strive for. لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. That man is nothing, humans are nothing but that which they strive for. Chapter 53, verse 39. Be you male or female, if you strive, you'll get your due. In relation to the form of creation, here the forms are perfect. Be you male or female. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ we've created man, humans, or man with a capital M, but we've created humans fi ahsani taqwim, in the best of forms, but irrespective of whether you're a man or a woman. Or when the question of dignity and humans being honored by Allah, again here, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that verily we've dignified and we've honored the offspring of Adam, be they male again or female. And there are several verses in this regard which shows that there's no superiority creation-wise, dignity-wise, attaining to perfection-wise, and so on and so forth. So this is very important, because these are verses of the Holy Quran, and you can now, from the logic of these verses, appreciate and acknowledge that these two, although they differ in their sexes, but when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to perfection, they're both honored, they're both respected, they're both looked at as equals. Now, that was the first introduction I wanted to give. The second point is this, that although they're both humans, males and females, they're both human, and they both have dignity, they both have honor, they both are creation-wise made of the same stuff, and they can attain to perfection equally. However, their duties in this world, are they the same too? Do they have exactly the same duties in the realm of jurisprudence, legally? Must they do exactly the same? When it comes to the acts of worship and acts of perfection, yes, they both pray, they both fast, they both have to be patient, they both have to obey, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, they're two different constitutions, two different mutually exclusive bodily constitutions at stake. Their hormonal constitution, their genetic constitution, it's different. And because of that, Islam has assigned a different identity for both of them. Not in spirituality terms, that's equal, but in their duties in this world. Their identities, their worldly identity differs. Now this, what I'm about to say and attribute to Islam, isn't necessarily something specific to Islam. Even before Islam, followers of previous and preceding Sharias, they appreciated, they had this point. It was part of the Sharia. And even cultures or tribes around the world, from the Amazon to Africa to Australia, even in tribes, this can be shown anthropologically. In anthropology, the experts there, they have shown this, that they see that there are common features that identity-wise have been given and have been attributed to women, even in tribes around the world. There are certain features which have been assigned upon the man. Even though those tribes may now have no access to any Sharia, but you see that they are following certain instructions which show that the woman's identity is different to the man. Then when you zoom into the respective identities and see what is that identity, you see a commonality there too. For example, in women, the identity which has been attributed to them in Islam and which is on a par with their physical constitution is, for example, women are nurturers. They nurture. Nurturing is an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah's rububiyyah. Allah is Rabb. He is the nurturer, the cherisher. Women manifest this quality of cherishing and nurturing more than men. Irrespective of whether that woman lives in the Amazon, in the deserts of Africa, or in Australia. Everywhere in the world, you see that the woman has a nurturing role. And this is so important that nurturing is part of her identity, becomes part of her identity. When I say this is on a par with her physical constitution, because of the womb, the fact that she has a uterus, there's nothing more nurturing in her physical body more than the uterus that she has, which nurtures a single unicellular embryo for 9 months, becoming a 3 to 4 kilogram fetus, and then a newborn after 9 months. This is through the nurturing of the woman, through her womb. So look, this nurturing capacity shouldn't be underestimated. Now, this is one attribute, and Islam regards this attribute as intrinsic to the woman's identity. Now, the man also has a nurturing identity. I mean, the man also manifests Allah's nurturing attribute, but to a lesser degree. You see? But the men also have it, but to a lesser degree. This manifests much stronger in women. That's why it's intrinsic to her identity. There may be attributes that the man, maybe attributes of Allah, that the man manifests more than the woman. Those attributes would be intrinsic to the man, such as Al-Qawi, the all-strong. So men's strength is more than women, be it in Africa, be it in Australia, America, wherever they are. This is something, it's on a par with their physical constitution. You can see this. These attributes which we extract from men and women, it's on a par with their physical constitution in addition to their innate natures. Another attribute which women manifest more is that of mercy. She is much more merciful than the man. The man is also merciful, but she manifests this attribute of Allah much more, Allah's Rahmaniyya. And therefore, being merciful is intrinsic to her identity. Also beauty, be it inner or outer, she manifests this more than the man. And that's why her being all beautiful, this attribute of Allah, is intrinsic to the identity of the woman. This was an important introduction, because if we fully understand this idea of assigning certain attributes as part of the man's or woman's identity, if you understand that properly, then you will understand many rulings of the Sharia. And we'll go through some of them now. You would also appreciate how to reply to many dilemmas that are posed. For example, one dilemma that is posed is that why is the man allowed to have more than one wife, but the woman is not allowed to have more than one husband? Now we have traditions that say that if the woman was to have more than one husband, then how can you tell who's the father? It's like if you have let's say 2 glasses of water, and you pour it on the ground, and then you want to now take the water and place the water in their respective glasses. Who's the father going to be? Okay. Now this was a wisdom that was answered to someone who asked this before 1400 years ago, and then the answer came that, well, you don't know who the father is going to be. When a woman has 4 husbands, for example, or 2 husbands. Now, you may say today we can easily find out, but it depends how you look at those kind of traditions, which say you don't know who the father is going to be. This has an esoteric interpretation. And the esoteric interpretation is this, that the woman is the nurturer, and for 9 months in gestation, she is nurturing this child. When she's nurturing this child, she has, let's say, a number of husbands. This is not allowed. I'm just trying to explain what the problem is. The way each husband behaves with the wife, this has an effect on her nurturing of the child. When the husband shows love and compassion to the wife, this love and compassion is translated into the nurturing of the child. A bond between that child and the father is built also. But let's say there are a number of husbands. Here, when the mother is nurturing a child and the mother has a number of husbands, who is the esoteric father of the child? Which male bonding of the woman will be nurturing the child? It's going to be a messed up product. And therefore you won't know who the father is. You'll know who the physical father is, but you won't know who the esoteric father is. And that's much more important. Well, they're both important, but the esoteric father, when you have a number of them, the child is going to be messed up. Also, each husband, another issue is, each husband may want to exercise, certain rights that he has over the wife. This will clash. This is abusing the woman. And when you abuse the woman, and assuming she's pregnant with child, it'll be abusing that child. You see, these are delicate points that modernity has distanced us from. The spirit of the law, the inner, batini, esoteric dimensions that these noble traditions bear. But with each generation, 1400 years ago versus today, more and more meanings come out of it. The verse of the Holy Quran, they're not limited by time. It's until the last day. It's applicable. The spirit of it. Okay. So that was one point. Now, if you go through different aspects of jurisprudence and have this in mind, that the woman's essence entails certain attributes of Allah that she has to maintain, because she has the potential to manifest these much more than the man, such as Allah's Rububiyyah, Allah's Rahmaniyyah, His mercy, and Allah's Jamal, beauty. Whereas the man, it's Allah's strength, Allah's sustaining attribute, providing sustenance. Those attributes are essential for the man's identity. Once this is understood, now let's go through different aspects of jurisprudence. By way of example, why is the nafaqah the man's duty and not the woman's? Because the woman is a nurturer. Let her be and nurture. Don't burden her with duties. The man, though, it's his duty. It's essential to him that he works and sweats and provides. He has to manifest his strength. He has to use his strength. Otherwise his manhood would be compromised. His manliness, his manhood, his masculine identity would be compromised, and that would be detrimental to his spiritual growth. So we see that the man has been assigned the duty to provide the nafaqah. that's on a line with, on a par with, or in line with the man's physical and spiritual constitution, whereas the woman has no duties whatsoever of providing the food, the clothing, and so on and so forth. That's in line with her constitution. In one hadith, the Holy Messenger has said, إِنَّمَا مَثَلُ الْمَرْأَةِ مَثَلُ الضِّلْءِ الْمُؤْوَجِ. The example of the woman is the example of a curved rib bone. إِن تَرَكْتَهُ انتفعت به. If you just leave the rib bone alone, you'll benefit from it. وَإِنْ أَقَمْتَهُ كَسَرْتَهُ. And if you try to straighten it, the rib bone will break. And there are many traditions which say, don't overburden, don't burden your wives. They have no duty. Don't overburden. If you do, and if you transgress the limits, this is going to cause problems for the wife. But if you just let her be, and you don't burden her, this would be deemed as an'amu leha, more favorable for her status quo. Wa arha lebalaha, more easy for her psyche. Wa adwamu lejamalaha, more persisting in relation to her beauty. But if you overburden her, it'll affect her psyche. Her beauty will be compromised earlier, sooner than later. Her state would be unfavorable if she was always given these burdens to do. So this is not a duty for women. She's a nurturer. If you let her be, she will nurture. Maximally. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that the woman should also always nurture inside the home. But during the earlier years of the child, nurturing inside the home is the maximum manifestation of nurturing. Imam Khomeini has spoken very delicately in this matter. He says, why would you compromise the child's nurturing by placing the infant in the hands of someone that you don't know? Why would you do that? The love that the woman, he says, the love that the mother gives to the child is irreplaceable. A kindergarten or nursery teacher can't replace or compensate that love that the mother has. And therefore, you're compromising with the child's well-being. Then Imam Khomeini says, this compromise in future years will lead to the child holding on to grudges and entering unhealthy walks of life, or even, God forbid, stealing, lying, and doing many other ills within society. So here we have to do our best, at least the first 2 years, maximally. Try to nurture your child, the more the better, until 7. Then from 7 onwards, since Islam has given a different protocol of how to raise children, from 7 onwards, then it's not that important anymore. It's not as important for the mother to stay at home. But in the first 7 years, if it's possible, you shouldn't compromise with that. Now, I appreciate for some women, it may be very difficult. No one is forcing you. This is not wajib. However, we're talking about the well-being of the child. If you can maximize it, one should. Imam Khomeini in one speech has said that the woman is a grand human being, society's nurturer. Humans are discovered from the laps of women. After all, she is the educator of humankind. The prosperity and wretchedness of a given society depends on the existence and status of women. By correctly educating herself, she educates humans. And by correctly educating herself, she frees nations. the source of all prosperities, emanates and springs from her lap. The woman must be the source of all prosperities. See, these points like this, how important they are. Even when you want to determine or ascertain any given woman, which job should I choose? Because no one is against women getting a job. But even there, when you want to choose a job, when you want to choose a subject, okay, choose a subject which does not compromise your identity. It doesn't compromise your nurturing capacity. It doesn't compromise your merciful capacity. It doesn't compromise your beauty dimension. In Islam, in relation to beauty, now we've touched upon it, it says at home, even if it means just wearing a necklace, but adorn yourself. Women who don't adorn themselves inside the home in front of their husbands, this shows that their beauty dimension is being compromised. Something which is essential to her identity. Something which is essential to her fitra, her innate nature. She's compromising on this. Now some women, God forbid, may never adorn themselves inside the house. When they go out in front of non-mahram men, they start adorning herself. And that is now, this is an Iblisi attribute. They're not under Allah's sovereignty here. They're sinning here. This is a contradiction in terms. They shouldn't be doing that. Allah's beauty has to be manifested in its right place. There are some places in this world where Allah's beauty is manifested less than in other places. You too, you have to manifest your beauty, adorn yourself, inside and your outer aspects, when with your husband. If you don't, or if you lack, you would be compromising with your female identity. And the less female your identity becomes, by default, you become, in spiritual terms, in esoteric terms, more male. The modern woman in the West is just like a man. She may be, though, a woman phenotypically, but esoterically, she's a man. She wants to do everything that the man does. Some countries may pride themselves in having a woman prime minister or a woman president. But if you analyze the woman a bit deeper, she's just like any other man. And no different to if a man would come and govern and be president. You see? It's different to when the president or prime minister is a woman, but is also a woman esoterically. That would be different. Okay, so, and the same applies to men too. So, if the man compromises with his identity, he would be becoming, in esoteric terms, more and more a woman. Now, when one understands what is the attributes essential to female identity, and what are the attributes essential to male identity, the spouse has to be careful not to belittle them, or one spouse to the other. One spouse shouldn't belittle the other, and especially in relation to belittling them in relation to those attributes which are essential to that spouse's identity. So if the woman was to belittle the man in relation to why he's not working, this is going to affect the man very badly. Or if the man was to belittle the woman in her nurturing dimension or her beauty dimension, this is going to affect the woman very badly. Things can go drastically wrong if this happens. A Muslim counselor, when he or she wants to analyze the environment in the house, one of the aspects is to see how one spouse is satiating those attributes essential to the identity of the other spouse, or how much they're lacking. Yes. Okay. Now, once we understand and have appreciated the esoteric understanding of the man and the woman, many things become apparent now in the Sharia. So one was the assigning the nafaqah upon the man, not the woman. That we've explained that already. Now, the jihad, going to war, it's an obligation for men. It's not an obligation for women. Why? Because she's a nurturer. If she wants, she can participate, but it's not obligatory. If she stays back and doesn't go to war, it will be more rewarding for her. She won't be compromising her nurturing capacity at the war front. And that's one of the reasons why all prophets were male. Not because males are superior to women spiritually, no. Lady Maryam, alayhi salam, her spirituality was higher than most prophets. Than most of the 124,000 prophets, Lady Maryam's spirituality was higher than them. But she was female, it doesn't matter. But she was never a legislative prophet. She wasn't a prophet. Why? Because one of the prophethood is a title. It's not a spiritual station. The spiritual station all prophets have to have is they have to have wilaya, meaning that proximity to Allah. Lady Maryam was a wali of Allah, had the wilaya, much stronger than most of the prophets, but she was never given the title, the rank, the position of prophethood. Why? Because with this position, every prophet, with every war which arises in a given prophet's time, that prophet has to be active in that war. And going to war is something not on a par with the nurturing capacity of women. And therefore women have never been granted the station of prophethood, the responsibility of prophethood. It's a question of responsibility, that's it. She's not belittled, or her status is not diminished just because no woman has been given legislative prophethood. You see? Even with Friday prayers, it's necessary for the men to go, but for the women, there's no necessity for them to go. They can stay at home, they can stay back. It would be more rewarding if they do. Why? Because Islam doesn't want to give this added burden to the woman. She's a nurturer. Why make her go? If she wants to go, she can go, and it will be rewarding. But it will be more rewarding if she doesn't, and as a result of not going, she's not burdening or compromising her nurturing capacity in any way. Or other attributes, she's not compromising those other attributes essential to her identity. Otherwise, if she wants to go though, she can go, and there'll be some reward. Maybe not as much as not going, but she'll be rewarded. The question of judges, that although it's not a unanimous, understanding that women can't be judges, there are some who believe they can, but there's no requirement for them to enter such a field. Because being a judge, although the majority of jurisprudence don't accept women being judges, one or two do, in any case, either way, the point is that being a judge, it goes against the nurturing capacity. It can compromise the nurturing capacity. It may compromise the woman's merciful capacity, and so on and so forth. That's why Islam says, look, be careful. Your identity as a woman, make sure you don't compromise it. Or, for example, with divorces. Here, with divorces, the man has the right to divorce. The woman hasn't been given this right. It's not put on a plate for her. If she wants, there are jurisprudential tools where she gets the power of attorney from her husband, so that she can divorce herself on behalf of the husband if the husband was to do A, B, C action, whatever they are. For example, if he was to become a drug addict, or if he was to beat the wife. There are ways through that, but it hasn't been put on a plate because divorcing is not on a par with her nurturing capacity. Divorcing means breaking up. It's a very ugly process. So, although she can, through other means, come to this divorce, but it's something which hasn't been given to her readily. At the time of a marriage contract, the woman can always, make stipulations if she's scared of certain things. Even Lady Zainab, alayhi salam, in her marriage contract, there was a stipulation made that wherever Hussein alayhi salam goes, I will follow him. I don't want my husband's permission. I will go wherever Hussein goes, irrespective. This was a stipulation made. Or in relation to inheritance. For example, a son inherits twice as much as the daughter. Now here, you may feel, someone will say, well, this is unequal, it's unfair, and so on and so forth. But given those introductory principles that we mentioned, here it makes sense. Why? Why should the son be given more? Because the son wants to start a family. And guess upon whose shoulders the responsibility is to provide for the family's food, clothing, accommodation, travel, and so on and so forth? It will be the son's. So he has to have some form of financial advantage in this regard, because he has to spend more in the future. Whereas with the woman, whatever she gets, it's hers. No one has a share of it. In relation to the man, others had a share of it, because the man had to provide for the future spouse to be, children to be, and so on and so forth. But with the woman, whatever money she inherits, the daughter, for example, whatever money she inherits, it's hers. And she can spend it however way she likes. No one has a share of that money but her. And even when it comes to the blood money of the man being twice that of the woman, who does the blood money go to when the man dies? In any given scenario. That blood money is twice as much as the woman, yes, but it goes to a woman who's lost her husband and is a nurturer. The woman is a nurturer. She doesn't have to work, but a bigger sum is given to her. Whereas if a woman was to die and the blood money goes to the man, there's no need to give so much, because the man then can work and earn, and so on and so forth. And finally, one point is that the man and the woman, they have to complement one another. They have to reach perfection because of the way they manifest different attributes of Allah. They kind of interplay with these different attributes, linking and complementing one another, being intertwined with one another. And this marriage, so to speak, leads to Allah being manifested more in their lives. Because the woman manifested certain attributes of Allah more than the man. The man attributed certain attributes of Allah more than the woman. Marriage is this interplay of attributes of Allah. There's an interplay here. And this is how Islam sees marriage. In one holy tradition, the Prophet says that an-nikahu sunnati, marriage is one of my customs. But this custom is a spiritual custom. It's not the normal marriage, because the normal marriage existed in previous sharias. It's not specific to the Prophet. But the way Islam looks at it, that's the spiritual, esoteric understanding of marriage, is an interplay of Allah's attributes. This is very important. It didn't exist with this lens before. And this is how a spiritual marriage has to be operated. And so they marry and they become more perfect. They work with one another. They manifest Allah more in their lives. Now, there are certain holy ladies who never married, because marriage is a journey to Allah. It's a holy endeavor. It's a sacred endeavor. And it's a journey to Allah, getting closer and closer to Allah, manifesting Allah more and more. People like Lady Maryam alayha salam, there was no man who can interplay and intertwine with her. Her spirituality was so high that there was no one to complement her. If there was no Amir al-Mu'mineen, Lady Fatima alayha salam would never have married. So sometimes we see this in history with certain individuals, be they women or men. Okay, so these were just a few points for yesterday and today, which I wanted to discuss, explaining the inner dimensions of, looking at a man and a woman, and the implications it bears today, especially for women in modern society. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.